Okay. All right, well, it's a little bit past 9:30, so we're already starting a little bit late. So let's go ahead and start moving forward through our agenda. We appreciate everybody coming out for the Utah Lake Commission Technical Committee meeting. It's been a while since we've met, but I think we'll start by going around and doing some introductions. I'm Mike Mills. I serve as chair of the Utah Lake Commission's Technical Committee. I'm also the coordinator for the June Sucker Recovery Implementation Program. Go ahead.
I'm JD Shepard. I'm with Mapleton City.
I'm Sarah Johnson with Central Utah Water.
Mike Rao with Central Utah Water.
Clayton Wolf, building a house in the lake. Juan Garrido, Springville City.
Brad Stapley, Springville City.
Dee Chamberlain, Salamanca Springs Homeowners Association.
Jeff Denblaker, CH2.
Craig Beckstrom, Provo City.
Drew Merritt, consultant.
Art Martinez, State Parks.
Jason Allen, State Parks.
Mark Ogren, Provo City, Water Reclamation.
Brian South, Provo City Water Reclamation. Rich Nicholson, Provo City.
Richard Nelson, Utah County.
Dale Foxton with DWR in Springfield.
Reed Price with Warren City, and I'm the vice chair of the committee.
Chris Keller, DNR.
Scott Daly, Division of Water Quality.
Eric Ellis, Utah Lake Commission.
Sam Brager, Utah Lake Commission.
Scott Dale about Utah Division Wildlife Law Enforcement Section.
Bruce Johnson, Division of Wildlife Law Enforcement.
Those that have joined us next to Clayton.
Brendan Snyder with Linden City.
Right. And then, you want to introduce yourself?
Rebecca Anderson, Provo City.
Welcome. And then, Steve, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
I'm
Steve.
Theron Miller with the Wasatch Front Water Quality Council.
Dennis Sorensen, Spanish Fork City.
All right. I think that pretty much covers everybody. Again, welcome to our meeting today. Our next item on the agenda is to review and consider approval of the minutes from our last technical committee meeting, which was all the way back in September of last year. I realize it's been a while ago, but does anybody have any revisions or comments on that meeting summary? Yeah, Rich.
My last name is spelled with S-E-N on the S.
Okay. And, okay. Anything else? All right, we would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Jason.
Just one question on this, on the second page.
Okay.
For the approval of the minutes from the July 20th meeting, it has Mike Mills made a motion to approve, and Chris Keller made a motion to approve, and Reed Price seconded. I think Mike probably asked for a motion,
Right.
and Chris made the motion.
Okay, we can make that correction.
And with that correction, I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Rich. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll consider those minutes approved with the changes recommended by Rich and also by Rich. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 3 on our agenda. It looks like, Jason, you're first up with an update on some of the happenings down here, particularly the dredging, I think is what we're most interested in.
You and me both. The lake level continues to go up. Yesterday we were floating around 5.8 feet below compromise, and now we're back down to 6. I guess the wind's shifting or something, I don't know. But anyway, we've come up probably a good 6 to 8 inches in the last month or so. Water. Central Utah could correct me if I'm mistaken.
Take your word for it.
Dredging. We finally got all the federal permitting over the holidays. We have decided to push as quickly as we can to dredge this spring, get the cofferdams in before the April 1st June Sucker deadline. And but that means that we will not be able to remove that dam until August 1st. Which, long story short, means that Provo Marina will be closed to all boating activity from about mid-March to 1st of August. Probably mid-August, realistically, by the time the contractor removes the cofferdam. There's still an internal debate about how much of the park, or if any of the park, will be open on the weekends. I can pretty much guarantee that we will be closed during the weekdays. It was explained to me by our construction manager that we will have around 8 to 12 truckloads of material in and out of the park on an hourly basis. And that makes me extremely nervous to have the public in here. The flow of the campground, the one entrance and exit to the park is not conducive to have heavy truck traffic and little kids on bicycles in and out of the campground. So I'm still pushing for a weekend opening when the contractor's not around, but we have to get a handful of OKs before that's allowed. Everyone believes that the contract can go out here shortly and that everything can be in place before the April 1st deadline. If any of that falls apart, I'll keep you guys in the loop. I know it's going to be hugely inconvenient to the public, and I apologize about that, but we are very worried about additional red tape popping up during the summer if we attempt to wait for the fall. So we have the okay, we just want to push forward and get it done and just take the hit this season and be in a lot better place.
Where are you dredging?
But the inner marina and the channel will be our goal. If the money goes far enough, we'll go out a little. We'll go out to the outer marina. But as of right now, the look of the monies, we're going to be lucky to be able to do that. The idea is to place a cofferdam, dewater the marina, remove all the docks, extend the ramps, extend the walkways, and reinstall everything pristine and new and without marine hazards. And the plan right now is to go down about 2 feet, hopefully 3 feet if the money goes far enough. So, any other questions? Yes, Eric?
You say go out to contracting, you mean go out to bid?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, put it out to bid. EFCM and GUV Engineering are putting those together as we speak, and we're hoping to get them out as quickly as possible to give the contractor enough time to place the proper cofferdam before April 1st.
What are the dates that the marinas can be closed again?
April 1st, the April 1st to August 1st window is the June sucker spawning season. So the dam has to be in place before then, and the dam cannot be removed until after that date without modification to the permit. So probably mid-March to first, second week of August is what's realistic.
Okay.
So, anything else? Yes?
Where's the spoil going?
That will be up to the contractor. We've contacted a handful of different sites. That actually ended up being one of the biggest headaches out of all of this. But the contractor will have the ultimate say. I know there's a certain value to it depending on the contractor, and so we'll leave that up to him or her. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes,
Law enforcement
yes.
on the lake during that period of time, will you have a boat or something
Yes.
like that out of the marina during that period?
Yes, we're still debating internally whether or not we want to, is Linden here? Linden Marina?
No.
City? We're debating whether or not we're going to get into an agreement with maybe the Linden Marina, since they're the only ones that actually have docks that, you can keep boats on overnight, or trailering, but there will be a law enforcement presence. We anticipate the water level to come up beyond its traditional 3 feet. We're hoping for a little bit more than that, so we're expecting a decent boating season. So the presence will still be there, the search and rescue efforts will still be there, but
You in your email, you had said recovery would be there. What did that mean?
I don't recall. What, can you?
It
I
just
don't
said
remember my own words.
something to the effect that kind of like you're on your own if you're boating during that period of time.
I apologize if that was the way it was taken. No, we'll do business as usual, just out of or most likely out of the Linden Marina, but
Great.
yeah.
Okay.
If there's enough water, we would be able to access the lake via the Sportsman's Access in the Provo River, but that will be very dependent on the water level.
Okay.
So, anything else? Okay, it's still very preliminary. We just barely got the okays. We're just, a couple weeks ago, so since the holidays, so we're still getting our acts together.
All right, well, we appreciate the update, Jason. And I think we all, maybe I'm speaking for too many people, but the improvements will sure be nice to extend our seasons in the future, so thank you. I'm next up to talk a little bit about carp removal. Overall, 2016 turned out to be a pretty good year for us. We did better than, in terms of total pounds removed, than we had in 2015, just over 3 million pounds, so we exceeded our target by a little bit. That was with a very poor ice fishing season back in the winter of 2015, and also a very poor December. We finished the year not on a very good note. That said, we are pretty happy with where we stand. Since September 2009, we are close to 24 million pounds that have been removed in total. And I say close, we're about 40,000 pounds shy of that 24 million mark. In terms of how the carp population looks, we've gotten results back from the standardized seining that Utah State and the Division of Wildlife Resources conducts each summer. Total number of carp have decreased from, so in 2012, the estimate was 24 carp per acre. In 2016, that estimate was 12 carp per acre in the lake, so that's been cut in half. And we can get really excited about that, but really the number that makes a difference is biomass in terms of pounds per acre out there. In 2012, we had 120 pounds per acre. In 2016, we were down to 77 pounds per acre. So the average size of the fish has increased just over a pound. We see older fish, not as many younger or smaller fish out there. And then Utah State University is going into some more detailed population level analysis in terms of size at different age classes and what the age dynamics of our current carp population look like. Our plan going forward, that research should be wrapping up here in the spring when we'll get our full report back. But our plan going forward is to continue with full-scale removal for at least the next year, pending all the necessary funding being in place for that to happen. But we would hope to remove another 3 million pounds in 2017. So that's kind of where we stand. Are there any questions on our carp removal project? Yeah, Greg.
In the original study that was done, I can't remember what year, but nearly a decade ago, I think.
Oh, yeah.
They gave a target goal for the level of carp you wanted to have to kind of achieve the objective. Do you have any idea what that goal means in terms of pounds per acre?
We do, and we're very close to that. That original study, it was great research. It gave us our targets, and the goal was to reduce the population 75%. Since that study was completed, a bunch of research in the Midwest actually looked at density of carp in terms of kilograms per hectare and what that threshold was to where the carp population didn't have the impacts on aquatic vegetation. And we're really close to that line where we're approaching that. The thing that keeps us above that line are a few seine samples that come back with really large numbers. You would call them outliers, but when we have sample sizes of 27 seine hulls, it's hard to throw out one of them. So we hover just above that line. And then monitoring the lake has actually shown aquatic vegetation showing up. This year with the dramatic decrease in water levels, it ended up being left dry, but we are seeing some of the changes we hope to see. It's difficult to say we're right where we want it to be, but we're very close. And so going forward, and part of this research that we're doing is looking at maintenance strategies, how many pounds need to be removed on an annual basis to keep the population in check. Yeah, Jason.
Just so you're aware, I emailed Bill when I sent out a large email notifying everyone about but if you interact with the Loys at all, please remind them that, they'll need to find a new home here shortly.
If water levels come up, he could potentially still use the river, but
Yep.
yeah, that's
Okay.
okay. We will have those conversations. In terms of current day carp removal, it's actually been really tough. The ice on the lake hasn't been thick enough to support full-scale removal of carp and all the equipment they have to haul out there. And then the rainstorms that we've had the last couple of weeks and relatively warmer temperatures have deteriorated the ice, and it's frozen again. It doesn't make for the best surface to be out there removing and driving trucks on the ice. So we actually haven't removed any carp since early December, which is discouraging and frustrating at the same time. We were in a similar situation about a year ago, but there's not much we can do. So that's where it stands.
Mike,
Yeah.
what's the long-term plan? So if you meet your goal in 2017, and whatever your long-range goal is, I'll probably go around at, 50 pounds per acre, but is there a longer-term continual management plan that'll keep harvesting some carp every year?
Right. The idea is that we would have much smaller numbers than what we've been doing the last 7 years, a low-level removal that would keep the population in check. That's been the plan since the get-go.
Forever, okay.
But finalizing exactly what that number is the research we're doing right now.
Is there funding in place to cover those low catches, those maintenance levels?
It's not sitting in an account somewhere, but we do have mechanisms and agencies that are on board, to provide the support.
That's a question every year, Jason.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if the maintenance level was resolved.
Our plan has always been to fund that through the June Sucker Recovery Program, and that's what we are hoping to be able to do, not knowing exactly what level is needed. It's difficult to say if the funding is right there to make it happen. But we started this we just took a leap and said, we've got some funding, let's get it started. And ever since year 2, it's been a year-to-year effort to make sure we have enough funding to keep it going. And that's kind of where we still are. So,
Well, someone that's out there every year, I can tell there's a difference.
yeah, it's good to know.
Money well spent.
Okay. All right. In going through there, most of the research I wanted to talk about for item B2 involved the carp population work that Utah State is wrapping up. The June Sucker Recovery Implementation Program is currently working on finalizing their work plan, but I can say that our current plan right now is to continue with the ecosystem monitoring research that we've been funding. It mainly looks at macrophytes in the lake, a few limnology parameters, looking at macroinvertebrates and zooplankton. That's in addition to the work that DWQ and others continue to put into research at the lake, but kind of sums up that agenda item pretty good. So, any questions about carp or June Sucker program research? Okay, thank you. We will move on to item number 4. That's a water quality presentation from Scott with Division of Water Quality.
I guess, before we get into the document that's on the agenda here to discuss, we'll just give a quick update on where we're at with what we set out with our phase 1 study for Utah Lake water quality beginning last fall. So that phase 1 had essentially 4 tasks, all starting with organization of a larger stakeholder group of all the local folks and all the interested folks in water quality for the lake. From that, we divided that group up into a number of working groups to tackle the technical issues. Okay? So task 1 of that work plan was really to assemble all the data that's available for the lake and to coordinate all the ongoing research from the various entities that were currently occurring. Task 2 was to do a beneficial use assessment, similar to what we do with our standards evaluation, so looking at all the current water quality data, assessing our water quality standards, and see where the lake sits in terms of supporting its beneficial uses. So the aquatic life uses, supporting for June sucker and other fishes, recreational uses, and agricultural water uses. From there, we were going to do a loading assessment to try to reevaluate some of the loading numbers that were included in the 2008 study. That kind of was the initial groundwork for this part of the study. And that was, there was some issues with, some of the loading estimates that we didn't have quite enough data to have a full handle on some of the non-point source stuff. Some of the changes that have occurred to loadings from the POTWs based on current upgrades and some of the new rules going in. We haven't done too much work on that part of it just because of some of the unknowns with the upgrades, and then also some of the interests that we'll talk about for revising phase 2 of the study. So some of that work's been put on hold more or less for the second phase. And then one of the other work groups was to look at model evaluations, being able to set up a model that could accurately predict water quality conditions in the lake. And that model's been selected, that report's finalized, and we're recently partnering with the University of Utah to develop a water quality model for the lake. Basically piggybacking on a larger project of theirs to simulate water quality conditions in the larger Jordan River Basin. And their interest is evaluating the effects of water quality from climate change and urbanization, given the status of climate change and the rapidly growing population throughout the basins. So we are right now trying to put together some kind of data evaluation. Took quite a bit of time to assemble our own data and also the data of the larger watershed group. We're trying to formulate that into some kind of package that we can get out to improve at some point. And I'll talk about maybe how that will fit in with this new process. So as we're going through this, the stakeholder group kept growing and growing and growing, and the number of really interested folks kept increasing. There's a lot of interest around this project for obvious reasons. And talking with Eric and the commission, there was a desire to kind of step back and try to formulate our stakeholder process in a little bit more organized and diplomatic way, to be able to remove some of the contention and just have a better partnership and transparent public process that all folks can come together and basically so we can end up with a product that everybody's on the same page and it meets everybody's goals without going too far and can be scientifically defensible. So what we had discussed, we had two previous projects within the Division of Water Quality where we've done a similar stakeholder process, one with the selenium standard development for the Great Salt Lake, and then the second for the Willard Spur project, which was a result of a discharge permit that we issued for a facility discharging to Willard Spur. The permit was challenged in court, and we had to step back and go through a scientific process to be able to defend that permit that was challenged by environmental community. And Theron down here and Jeff Dinblake were both heavily involved in that process. And so we thought a good starting point for this would be to develop or borrow from that process, and Jeff was pretty instrumental in developing that on the CHQ's side from a contractor agreement. So what we're proposing is a formalized process consisting of a steering committee and a science panel that will work together to evaluate the policy issues and the scientific issues and be able to communicate those with the larger stakeholder group that currently exists for the lake, this group and also the other individuals. So everyone from universities, the POTW community, the environmental community, folks interested in fisheries and wildlife, the Division of Water Quality, etc. So we're hoping that we can develop a stronger public process that's more transparent. We can account for some of the uncertainties in our research and be able to move ahead and provide reasonable recommendations even if we don't know everything. Because we feel that that's beneficial for everyone to have some kind of resolution at some point to be able to make decisions for permitting and also for moving ahead in certain water quality improvement projects, safe from non-point source and those kinds of things. So I think, did you pass? Yes. So I think everybody has in front of them the document that we are working with. This document, like I said, was borrowed heavily from the Willard Spur project. The first 2 pages just kind of outline the general overview of the project and why we're setting up this stakeholder process, and then goes into a little bit more general detail on the general roles of the individual major players, I guess, for actually making standards, recommendations, and recommendations for the division. So we have a section there for the Division of Water Quality, Utah Lake Commission, the larger stakeholder structure. And then, I guess just to lay out the structure of this, you can look at page 2, has that little schematic on there. So you'll see the steering committee and the science panel in the center. And really, the way to think about the steering committee, this is representing all, it's more interest-based representation. So folks from the regulated community who have a stake in any decisions that are made, the Division of Water Quality, the Utah Lake Commission, Division of Wildlife Resources, the June Sucker, or any of the other endangered species folks. Anybody who has basically a stakeholder interest in the lake, this is the group that will represent that stakeholder process. The science panel is structured more to represent, it's more of a discipline-based structure, where we'll have folks that are heavy in limnology, or wetland ecology, or water quality, or modeling, or some of the other science disciplines that we think, as a stakeholder group, are important to capture for doing the study on the lake. And then you'll notice that the Utah Lake stakeholders and the general public will have access to both of those committees as we move through the process. Overall, the general goal is the steering committee will establish a science panel, make recommendations to populate the science panel. The science panel will then guide the science process, so determining what questions we're looking at, how to evaluate the questions, what research we need to implement, review the reports. They'll be responsible for doing peer review, and basically packaging that science up and making a recommendation for an in-lake water quality endpoint to the steering committee for their consideration. And then those two committees will interact with one another to provide feedback and adjustments throughout the process. And then ultimately, the steering committee will report to the Utah Lake Commission and Division of Water Quality on their final recommendation. And then the portion that's on the right-hand side here, that's just the blue boxes going with the Division of Water Quality, the Water Quality Standards Work Group, Water Quality Board, and the EPA. That's our process on the Division of Water Quality side. This is what we have to do on our end to make any kind of standards recommendation, have them adopted into the rule. Any number that we have needs to be reviewed by the Water Quality Standards Work Group. Aaron, again, leads a representative on that group. Then they'll make a recommendation to our Utah Water Quality Board, and they'll adopt it into the rule. And then we have to have some feedback from the Environmental Protection Agency on whether or not they feel like the standard is meeting their criteria.
How does the University of Utah fit in? Are they the study contractor?
Well, yes, we'll go through this. We haven't made specific recommendation on how the panels are structured, or who's gonna be represented on the panel. We have ideas that Eric and I came up with on kind of composition and stakeholder groups and expertise. But one of the things that we have written in here, and that was part of the, similar to Willard Fur, is that any of the study contractors really aren't permitted to be on the science panel or in the steering committee, just to kind of have, remove that level of interest from, if we get a little bit better unbiased work, if we do that in that way. So I think that the University of Utah would probably, at least in the capacity that they're operating now, would be a study contractor. Now you can ask the question, the University of Utah or USU, for example, all the work they're doing on the studies and Mike was talking about it earlier. You could say that, okay, well, they're a study contractor, so you couldn't have someone like Jeremy Data on the science panel. But the Utah State is a large organization, so could you have someone that's in a different department or has a little bit different expertise, like Wayne Wertzbach or Bethany Nielsen or some of those other folks? Could you have them on the science panel, even though their organization is involved? So I think that's something that would be open for discussion as we
Seems like the academics are more up to speed with science than a lot of the agency folks.
Yeah.
So it seems like they provide some value.
Yeah, I think we agree with that. And it makes it kind of challenging because, on one hand, for a science panel, you want a lot of local expertise to assist, make up your science panel for the lake, right? But your local expertise is gonna be really interested in doing contractual work. So it makes it kind of challenging if you have a certain expertise to fill. And, you know, so we're trying to set up, there's a provision in here that allows us to go outside of, out of state or to a larger pool of science expertise to be able to pull this. And so if we have to go and pull a national expert in from a university in the Midwest or that east somewhere, wherever they're at, I think we're okay to do that.
It would be nice to have somebody that's an expert in shallow lake ecology.
For example. Yeah, and you know, our shallow lake ecologists here are probably gonna be doing the work, so we have.
So Scott, would you anticipate the steering committee having a budget where they would contract out for studies, or would that be handled more by water quality like it is now?
For the steering committee or the science panel?
For the steering committee, like, are they going to be coming up with research ideas and then going out and contracting for that research to take place, or is that separate?
That's, I'm not sure how we kind of work through that. Thinking about water quality's money, you know, we have some issues with state procurement stuff, so I'm gonna have to be writing the contracts.
I see.
And I don't know, maybe there's a way that we can write the contract to the science panel, if there's some kind of formal organization, and then they would subcontract. I see that kind of getting messy, but I think that it'd be reasonable to be able to have me do the contracting work, you know, based on the recommendations of the steering committee. So the steering committee wants to pursue a certain research avenue with a certain individual or a certain scope, then that's how I write the contract and then have it reviewed by the science panel.
So it sounds to me like it would work best if the steering committee was a recommending body to how DWQ should spend monies that are dedicated to Utah Lake research. Is that a summary of what you're expecting?
Yeah, one of
And
what I
if so,
think,
does DWQ have the ultimate trump card where now we don't want to do that? Or are you open enough to listen and do what the steering committee says?
I think that's really the ultimate goal of this. I mean, one of the huge benefits of this process that I see is that it can bring together funding not only from DWQ, but all the other funding agencies that are out there, and we can pool our funds and do research that is meeting a common goal that's set by the science panel, and we're not off on our own tangents doing our own individual research trying to combat one another. I think it's a far more productive process if we can pull those resources and use that funding to do the research that is determined to be the necessary research by the science panel, because they're going to be the expertise that really knows where we need to go for establishing a nutrient criteria. And I know that's probably going to be a larger discussion on, there's lots of different funding sources out here right now, university funding, and POTW funding, DOQ funding, there's June Sucker funding, there's all these other things that are mitigation commission, and how do those resources, can we pool those and then start working towards a common goal?
But absent those funding sources, if it was just DWQ money, which exists right now, you would rely on the steering committee to steer spending that money in hopes of these other POTW or other state or federal agencies would cooperate with this core group of people to guide what they study as well.
That's what works. And obviously we can't require anyone to contribute, so we can't go to, but it doesn't say you must put your money here. That's certainly not on the table. But we would like to have this structure mean something to the larger stakeholder group, and we can all buy into it.
Could you kind of just said it, but could you clarify the end goal of all of it? It seems to me that a rather final goal, it's a single number, correct? Nutrient criteria.
So when we started the process, and the original stakeholder kickoff, the idea was the endpoints for the project would be a nutrient criteria that would do in-lake site-specific criteria for nitrogen and phosphorus in the lake, a total maximum daily load that would make recommendations for load reduction based on the indicator value that was already used to list the lake back in 2002, or use attainability analysis, which would basically is an evaluation of whether or not your use is fitting with what currently exists. But we feel that the best way to get at the ultimate number is to do the science and generate a numeric nutrient endpoint for the lake. So that's the number that is supportive of the beneficial uses. Really, that's what you need to go down a TMDL route. You know, if you have that endpoint, then you do a new evaluation of your water quality data and determine if you have exceedances or not. And then if you have exceedances, then you go down the TMDL route. But you're starting with a more defensible endpoint rather than the .025 that was used, which is a general indicator value for all lakes, not at all representative of Utah Lake. And then you're doing your TMDL along with load reductions, and all your implementation strategies are based off of that indicator. So yeah, we feel like that numeric nutrient criteria endpoint for the lake gets provides a lot more certainty for the regulated community. It's a lot more scientifically defensible than what we have now, and it'll make any future products, TMDL or use attainability analysis or anything like that, a lot more defensible.
Scott, how do you do the non-point sources? How do you control them and their feeding into the lake?
How do you?
Like POTWs, you can permit us.
Right.
How do you do that to non-point sources?
So you're aware that we don't have regulatory authority to permit with non-point sources as it stands now. So what we typically do is we go through a TMDL route, and then we'll establish watershed load allocations. So we'll use a water quality model or an evaluation of the data to determine what the loading is from individual sources in the watershed. So we'll come up with X pounds from septic tanks, X Y pounds from stormwater runoff, agricultural runoff, and any other non-point sources that are present in the watershed. And then we develop an implementation strategy to reduce those. So for a septic, if you have a certain amount coming from failing septic tanks, and you would develop a implementation program to encourage septic upgrades and septic maintenance and stuff like that. If agricultural return flows are a big source, then you go in and do things like irrigation improvements, so you have less return flow, washing nutrients into the river. Stormwater, stormwater management plan, detention basins, low impact development, that kind of stuff. So that's all taken care of in the planning and implementation aspect of the TMDL. For here, what we're trying to do, this is going to be more in lake, an evaluation of the lake ecology, what we need to have to support the uses. It doesn't so much depend on what's coming into the lake at the current time. You just need to know how those nutrients that are in the lake are interacting and causing issues for that might be detrimental to fish, or the harmful algal blooms, or or algal scums, or all these other things that you might think are an issue. The loading, I don't think at this point is as critical. We're trying, and I know Darren is working on this quite a bit now, but it is certainly necessary to get a better handle and start characterizing those non-point sources so that we can start working down and doing implementation strategies for non-point source. So I know Darren's doing a lot of monitoring throughout the summer. We're trying to hire a local watershed coordinator that will focus specifically on non-point source issues. So developing a monitoring plan, coordinating with a stakeholder group to be able to get better estimates for stormwater, for the agricultural sources and so on. And then start working down the route of developing those implementation plans. So if we eventually do get to a TMDL route, that will have a decent data set that will support making the load reductions. As it is now, our data set's not sufficient enough to be able to allocate specific sources down to that X, Y, and Z pound level to be able to make those recommendations.
Do we have other feedback for Scott and this process?
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, I
just had a question. I'm Brad Stapley from Springville, and I'm kind of new to hearing, I've heard kind of both sides to this Utah Lake issue, where we have DWQ that's going in one direction. We have I don't know if you want to call it science people or people outside that are looking at it. And it doesn't seem to be like there's a lot of agreement between the two, or even the process. And so, and speaking for a community that has a treatment plant that goes into the lake, how is the committee going to be actually formed with members? And it will be representative of both of these sides that don't appear to agree with each other, but are still trying to, they say are doing the same thing, trying to improve the lake quality. How's that going to happen, actually physically, when you're putting members in and they're working?
We tried to spell that out and document it. I don't know how much time we have, Mike.
We
but
probably
I'll-
have 5 to 10 more minutes.
So starting on page 3 is the charter document for the steering committee. And this will step through how we think about, I guess this isn't gonna deal with how we formulate the steering committee, but if you
But that's what I'm asking, is
Right.
how, you have these two diverse
So
sides.
go down to page 5. I think that would be a good place to start. Table 1. So working with Eric, and the Utah Lake Commission, and then within the Division of Water Quality, and then just kind of getting feedback from individuals as I see them around in the community. This is the affiliation for the stakeholder group that we thought might be representative for what we have in Utah Lake. And so what you'll notice here is a wide range of interests from the Utah Lake Commission and Division of Water Quality. And Erica Gaddis and Eric Ellis, we kind of came up with the recommendation to have those two co-chair the committee. Okay, so you'll have the Utah Lake Commission and Division of Water Quality co-chairing the steering committee. But then representation will be made up from Forest Fire State Lands, which are the owners of the lake bed. Water Users Association for folks using water downstream. Fish Wildlife Service because of the endangered species. Department of Agriculture and Food because of, or any other ag representative because any recommendation could ultimately impact non-point sources to the lake down the road. Public health because of the harmful algal blooms. There might be opportunity for the Utah County Health Department to be represented. Recreational interests we think are pretty important. We typically try to have an environmental or conservation environmental interest represented. Central Utah would be good representation. And then we have 2 slots for representatives from the POTW community. And I try not to fill these in, and then also the last one, DNR, Wildlife Resources. Try not to fill these in too much because the idea is that the Utah Lake Commission and Division of Water Quality will take recommendations from the stakeholder group on the individuals that will populate the steering committee. So this will be up to the local folks to be able to figure out who they want represented. And certainly this is draft. We can go and make recommendations on the structure of this committee. But as it is now, we have 11 individuals. It's an odd number because when things come up to a vote, I think that you're going to try to reach consensus where you can, but there's provisions in here for having a majority for when you're making your final decisions.
So Scott, going back to, and I'm sorry, I don't know Springville's representative's name, but you look at this, there's 11 people on there, and there's only 2 that represent this community, and maybe 3 if you count the Utah Lake Commission. So that leaves 8 that are state representatives. And bringing together the 2 groups is not happening. You have 8 versus 3. And your consensus is 3/4, right? So the 3, which is all the local communities, are not representative because the state and other agencies can trump everything else, and then the representation happening on the local level is not there at all.
But I think it's still important to have the other folks.
Oh, I didn't
who
say
have
that wasn't. I didn't say that wasn't. I'm just saying you're trying to bring a consensus, but you're overloaded at 8 to 3. Does that make sense?
I don't know if 8's right.
No,
Division
8's
of
right.
Forestry, Fire and State Lands,
But you have water users that are and recreational users
and
that
Department
aren't
of
state.
Natural Resources. Three state.
You have your county health department.
Recreational, environmental.
I see where you're going.
I think what.
I think the ultimate question is, are you willing to add more representation from the POTW community? Because you have regulated POTW community, which refers to the treatment plant, but there could be other lake interests that could be represented from a municipal level. So I think the ultimate question is, what is the feeling of Eric's and Erica's? I don't know who drafted this, but is there openness to add people as seen fit, recognizing the need to have a manageable sized
Right.
steering
I mean, I don't think you want 30 people on this committee, right?
Look at this.
I think the issue with this whole thing that Rich is alluding to, and the fellow, again, Brad, okay, from Springville, is that, I mean, if this were to be a typical TMDL effort, or, well, as we did for Willard Spur, sorry, for Sunny, and we needed to have, because I was a member of both of those, we need to have equal representation, in particular in this issue, this, obviously, we're gonna trying to set a criteria, which will likely be low, because it'll probably be based on things like cell counts of HABs. So this is gonna have great onerous on the municipalities around here. There could be the chance to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on upgraded POTWs. And yet, the steering committee doesn't have any. It has maybe, a Mark or a Rich, who are basically working at a plant to manage a plant, but the elected officials who hire them and who will be responsible for what could be a huge monetary, responsibility is not even at the table, and yet they're gonna be up, having to put out changes in rates and so forth. And so truly the ultimate stakeholder to me are the elected officials and municipalities who are gonna be responsible for what might come out of this steering committee. So I don't know if that's what you're thinking, Rich, but that's what my thought is, that we need to have those folks, either city councilmen or board members or whatever, so that they see this process. If we don't, it's that transparency, we're gonna have a big issue all through the process, that there's not gonna be inclusive enough, and that's one of my biggest concerns.
I think that they'll be informed through the commission board, I would assume. And I don't know if you'd want elected officials sitting on a steering committee taking recommendations from a science panel that are elected officials and have no experience in this field at all. But I think they'll be plugged into the process, and maybe the org chart needs to be changed a little bit to show that the elected officials are involved at some point, being advised through the commissions.
This is a comment that we have received before, and it's something that Eric and I have talked at length about, having the local elected officials involved. And we thought that the Utah Lake Commission governing board, that's made up of elected officials, would serve in that capacity. I don't think I don't see that elected officials are gonna really wanna be on a steering committee.
They won't, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, and, well, the amount of time that they have available to dedicate that kind of effort, it's not typically something that they can.
Well, it's typically our job, I'm the public works director, for example, it's my job to keep my city council informed on what's going on. And so it's just important to us that and again, I just see that there's two different groups here and they don't agree with each other. How are you going to get those two together and get a good product? Because if you ignore one and say your voting structure just is 8-3, the one group's going to say they never listened to us. And so all the money you're going to spend doing this is going to be wasted. But if you can somehow get the groups to where they're equally represented, and then they work together to find the right answer, you're not going to waste your money. But right now, honestly, the feeling I'm getting is that you've got two groups that don't agree, and one of them has a little bit more power, is going to say, forget you, we're going to do it this way. And then you're just going to have these guys all mad, and everybody's going to be angry, and you're going to waste all this money. Make it even from the beginning.
See, I don't get that sense. I think that they're trying to work together, and the number 8 should probably be disputed right now. Not that I'm a proponent of giving cities more voice than 2, But if you look at the state, you've got Division of Drinking Water, Forestry, Fire and State Lands, Department of Agriculture, and Department of Natural Resources. There's 4. You've got the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They're not state, they're federal. They'd probably lean towards state thinking, though. I could buy that argument. Recreational club or business, who knows what they'll think. Environmental, but we're looking at, they're trying to get lots of different representation to do exactly what you're suggesting, and I agree that cities probably deserve more representation than what's listed here, and I think that that's the ultimate. Greg always sums things up great.
I mean, I think it'd be helpful to have, maybe understand a couple of process questions. What is gonna be the process of finalizing this draft? What's gonna be the role of the commission governing board? And are they scheduled to meet next week? March. They're not meeting until March. So this is gonna be finalized before the commission ever sees it.
We had talked about sending this out to the governing board for review, recognizing that they weren't gonna have a meeting in the timeframe that we were looking at. But so process-wise, we were thinking, that I think take comment from this group. And we haven't really talked about how to do that. If it's just to send, mark up a version and send it to Eric and myself. And then we'll, consider those comments and do a comment matrix, summarize all the comments received, make the changes and show folks how we made the changes in the document, produce a clean document, and then that will go to review by my director and by the Utah Lake Commission for approval. And then when we meet in the middle on the document, then it'll be.
So you wouldn't see this being finalized till sometime after the March board meeting?
Well, I guess that's.
Or,
At a minimum that we have had, given the board an opportunity to comment and provide feedback.
but not as a board, as individuals.
Correct.
I would seriously recommend regarding some of the sensitivities that I think have been raised here, and I think the overriding objective here is creating a process. You're talking in your opening paragraphs about a process that will gain broad acceptance and will be consensus based. I think it is important to have the board, as a board, not just as individuals, see this and provide input as a board before it's finalized.
I would go so far.
So that would mean either delaying finalization till March or possibly scheduling an earlier meeting of the board. I personally believe that that's gonna be critical to achieving the broad-based support and understanding. I think it would be helpful for the board members to actually hear some of this discussion and have that discussion amongst themselves as a board, as opposed to trying to respond to it individually and not necessarily having the benefit of some of that group discussion and perspective.
I would go so far as formalizing a resolution, because that would be, you would have something in writing that says the Utah Lake Commission Board supports this process. And then fine tune it based on the recommendations of this body to add a little more representation to equalize what they feel might be a disproportionate amount of representation from one of the sides, one of the viewpoints. But I really think that a resolution would go a long ways, and they don't do them very often. So this would really say, okay, board, pay attention. This isn't just come listen to a presentation and vote saying, yeah, that sounds good to me. No, read through this and say, this is what we as a board are agreeing to for the betterment of Utah Lake. We do want to work arm in arm to determine what's best. And then both sides of the issue, there's two sides, and if more sides are created, can all point to this document at a later date saying, look, we're supposed to be working together.
So if we have 2 more municipal representatives, would
Just
that
just a thought on that.
balance it enough?
We've talked along here, you got the POTWs represented, and kind of what Brad was talking about, having the more municipal representation. You've got somebody like Juan or Nestor that's involved on the stormwater side. Maybe you have somebody with that background that brings still a municipal side to it, but maybe a little different look at it. That you're kind of getting into the non-point side of it. And then maybe even just kind of looking overall, you've got some of the agricultural uses there, but maybe you have somebody like the Farm Bureau that, rather than a state agency that's looking at agricultural interests, somebody that's more representing the farmers or something along that nature, right? Maybe that tends to balance it a little better.
And, you know, I was just making recommendation of who's gonna represent those affiliates. I think it's up to the interest to make a recommendation on who's gonna serve on there. So if it's not the or if it's not UDAF, you know, make a recommendation. I think the ag interests would come together and make a recommendation on who's gonna be there. If it should be Farm Bureau or UDAF or whoever else.
Eric, I don't think that there's a magic number that is as important as the process
That's right.
of having the board members fully involved, fully informed and understanding of the trade-offs and the issues. And there may be a couple of different combinations of proposals that may want to be discussed by them, either before such a meeting or during such a meeting or with the executive committee or whatever. And I don't think there's probably any value in the technical committee making a specific recommendation as to what the number is today or even the positions. But I think there's an issue, and I think that the key thing in my mind is having the board fully informed and fully involved and fully understanding the process and buying off on it. Because given the length of time this thing is going to take and the turnover that will probably occur on the board itself, as largely elected members, I think having that as a baseline for this process will help build the long-term credibility and broad-based support that you're looking to have for the ultimate decisions.
Okay. Well, we'll talk, as we did drafting this, about figuring out a couple more positions that might be balancing out the local interests.
Then beyond that process, I just want, so the output of this process is going to be this numerical nutrient criteria endpoint for the lake. Okay, there's two questions. So then subsequent to that, once that number is identified, then you'll go through the TMDL or comparable process for establishing other regulations that may affect treatment plants or other point and non-point sources or other ways of achieving those goals. Right? Do you intend or do you envision at this point in time this same steering committee and scientific panel being involved in that process? Or once you achieve the NNC, their role and their process is essentially complete, and then it becomes just kind of a regulatory decision-making process to go to the next stages?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that could work since it's already, I mean, if it's a functioning and, you know, bought into stakeholder process, I think that would work. Typically TMDLs, you know, aren't quite that formal, but certainly it would work for that process.
Now, one last question I've got is part of adopting the MNC is to what extent is the actual achievability of that number going to be scientifically evaluated as part of this process?
So that would be a further, that's more that use attainability analysis.
So we're going to, so I understand, we're going to identify a goal.
Right, or the number that, in an ideal world, it would be
In an
a
ideal
number that would support all of the uses for the lake.
And so, but we recognize that goal may or may not be achievable. At what point does achievability become a relevant point of information in any subsequent decision-making process?
So that would be after you evaluate that new standard and see if it's meeting the standard, or in that TMDL or use sustainability analysis. So if you would set the standard, collect new data, collect your data and evaluate your data against that standard. If you have a violation, okay, so you're not meeting your uses, then you would go down, it would be put on the 3D list typically. And then you would go down that TMDL process, and during that process, if you determine it's not feasible to meet that standard because of hydrologic conditions, altered hydrologic conditions, because of how it flows, managed now, and you can't change that, or some other factor that can't be mitigated, then you would go down that use attainability analysis to look at that achievability for the standard.
One of the big problems associated with this process is the fact that the state rules are requiring the treatment plants to move ahead with very expensive and extensive plans. And the process we're talking about here gives me some optimism that we'll understand the lake a lot better than we understand it right now. But the decisions we're just talking about were made several years ago based on factors other than the scientific information from the lake and from the drainage basin. And as a result, that's marching ahead. I'm sure that there are many people who are saying, can we trust the state? Not aiming this at you, but the fact that the Water Quality Board and the rules and the staff and so on have moved down the path for nutrient removal, and it has been achieved somewhat that some plants and other plants are having to make decisions day by day based on the deadlines associated with nutrient removal. And now we're saying we better find out whether nutrients are a problem or not. And I agree with that, but that is going to be a several-year process. And if this goes parallel to the rules that are currently in effect to force the plants to move ahead, those that haven't, then it becomes a moot point. Okay, so we find out what the lake, more about what the lake is like and what needs to be done perhaps, but that becomes, oh, sorry, we already spent those several $100 million. And so people are saying, can the Division of Water Quality be a legitimate arbitrator in this situation? Because to end up with the result that I think is justified, that nutrients are not what we thought they were in the lake, and it's not the kind of issue that it's been kind of presented. But the state has gone ahead with the requirements essentially to allocate the TMDL loadings. And so that's really a dilemma. And I'm not saying, hey, let's blow the whole thing up and just forget it all, because that's not the solution. But the problem is, it's a big problem. And I don't know the solution to it because I don't have power to tell anybody what to do and not do. But anyway, I just wanted to voice that as being the concern, and Brad was alluding to that, of course, in the whole thing. He's got to tell his people, do we go ahead with a major upgrade of our treatment plant almost immediately, or do we sit back and hope that they won't really smack us like they'd be able to, and wait for the results to see whether we have to do that or not? So, it's a real dilemma. I don't know what the solution is, but
I think this process is trying to get everybody together to reach that conclusion. Mike?
So Eric, do you want to just quickly sum up how you see this playing out? Are you planning to draft a resolution for this body to review, or do you see that playing out just at the governing board level? And then maybe Scott, speak quickly as to how you plan to address comments that would come in from this.
And that's in March, so that's, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think we had talked about having it move a little faster than that, but having the buy-in and.
I think if you move forward without their blessing, you're wasting
It's
time.
probably not feasible to have an earlier meeting.
Yeah.
But, I'm thinking, how much time would folks need for comment, for one? I'm just trying to play the timeline out in my head.
I guess I would suggest a process whereby you solicit comment from this group. That there be another technical committee meeting before the March meeting. And
Next month, we'll plan to have a resolution ready and set a deadline in between now and then to get comments from this body on the draft document.
well, I guess what I was suggesting is you might want to solicit feedback and actually maybe modify this based upon that feedback, if you deem appropriate or reasonable, and then bring that updated draft version of the document to the technical committee in February, and then have the technical committee make a recommendation to the governing board.
Okay.
So if we, just 2 weeks, and then folks, do comments, send to me.
And they should be sent to you, Scott?
How about
Eric?
Eric and myself?
I sent it out to the group, so I'll forward anything that you send to me to Scott. If you have see Scott's email on that,
Okay.
CCS.
Okay. Theoretically, we could meet twice before the governing board meets again in March.
Yeah.
So we could have comments all back by our next meeting date, February 15th. Eric could draft the resolution. We could approve that or consider approving that at our March 15th meeting. That's a quick turnaround for the governing board, though, if we waited that long.
The board meets on what day that month?
I believe it's the 23rd. Is that right, Eric?
Yes, 8 days beforehand.
Yeah.
So is it reasonable to have comments to me
Yes,
by
23rd.
Monday, January 30th?
Yep.
Or maybe Friday before, and then I can just get ground running on Monday with,
I think Monday the 30th is reasonable, and then that would give you guys,
2 weeks.
what, 2 weeks, 16 days to respond to those and make any appropriate
Yeah.
modifications for this meeting, although you'd probably want to send out a revised version of this at least a couple days maybe before that. Well, we're meeting on Wednesday, the 15th,
Correct.
Let's make those end of business on the 22nd.
okay? And then you get back to us on the, by preferably that Friday or Monday before the Wednesday technical committee meeting on the 15th.
So the next technical committee meeting will be, is that March 5th?
February 15th.
Okay. We appreciate everybody's comments and providing review of this document, and appreciate DWQ and Eric working together to try to iron out a process to move through going forward. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. Scott Dalebout from DWR is here to talk about Quagga-Muscle. So go ahead, Scott.
Thank you for allowing me to visit with you folks today. My name is Scott Dalebout. I'm a lieutenant with the Utah Division of Law Enforcement Section. I've been off about 25 years with law enforcement. Recently, I've been asked to take on some of this aquatic invasive species work, specifically logistics around the state. I've been going around the state doing just that and working on several different projects. One of these projects happens to be a Utah Lake project. It's important for everyone, and I know people in this room understand the importance of keeping these invasive species out of carp. It's devastating to the ecology and to the water users down the road. So, as you know, Utah Lake is a desired destination for folks coming from Lake Powell, and it turns out from Lake Mead. We've had infested boats that have tried to show up from those waters. In addition, Utah Lake presents a lot of challenges, as you know, because of all the different entities around the lake, and so we've had a hard time maintaining some consistency with our interdiction work around the lake. In addition to that, we had a person, our AIS biologist out of our Springville office. That person was in charge of the entire DWR Administrative Central Region, which included Deer Creek, which is suspected invasive, and the work at Utah Lake, and that was just too much for that one person. That one person doesn't work for us anymore. We're in the process of hiring a new person, and so I really wanted to get something going here beforehand, and then down the road turn it over to our new person. Two of my other priorities are Willard Bay and Otter Creek, just because of the various reasons, but this is presented, I think I bit off a little bit more than I could chew on this, but I'm going to keep doing it because that's what I do. And so I've met with the state lands folks and got some great direction on leases around the lake, and I'm gonna be visiting with these folks throughout the summer and try to impress the importance of interdiction and stress the importance to them and try to get buy-in and get some help, I guess, from them, and so we have a more consistent approach to AIS interdiction around the lake. I think that we with wildlife need to do a better job of helping maintain that here, and so I just wanted to let you folks know kind of what I'm up to, and see if there's anything you would suggest, or if I'm just wasting your time, or if you would like information, or questions, or advice, or anything like that. So I just wanted to keep this real simple. You guys are very busy. Yes, sir.
Are there mobile units that could be left at some of the marinas around that don't necessarily have the staff from wildlife, but rather that could be set up with a simple set of instructions so that somebody coming in could use it, fire up the pressure washer or whatever, and spray off their boat if they feel like they need to?
That's a twofold question. The first part is yes, and the second part is no. The first part, yes, we have mobile units. We'll have one here at the park. We'd like to put one on the other side at the
Orphan Bay Marina, Saratoga Springs Marina?
Yes, because of the size and the volume of folks there. In order to wash a boat, it's up to 140 degrees water, so I don't leave instructions to have just some Joe off the street because they could really hurt themselves. And according to Western invasive species folks, to maintain some consistency and a standard, you have to be certified on how to clean a boat. We've put the training on for our parks folks and for our division folks. We could certainly train someone, so if we had one here on the other side. What I'm hoping is that the marinas around, if they ask a series of questions which will help them, we'll put up signs, we'll give them the literature they need and the direction they need. If they don't meet a certain criteria to be on the lake, if they've been in Lake Powell just recently and never received a wash or haven't been out the dry time, that they will direct them to get a wash. That may mean a paying customer that day, which is bad because I know folks, they're relying on this income. However, for the good of the lake as a whole and for the water users, I think that the larger good has to think, the larger good has to be understood. So your question.
So you could maybe train a Saratoga Springs city employee that works down at that marina to do that?
And what I would like to do is have one person in this DW or administrative region just for Utah Lake that just goes all the time and helps ask questions, answer questions, help to maintain that consistency. You know how it is if you train a bunch of people, they'll go out and everything's fine for a while, but then over time they just things change. If I can have a person that maintains that consistency, and I can't guarantee that person because I don't know what their funding is for the region yet, but we can certainly do more than we've done. I'm really worried because this water means more to you guys than anybody, but I want to do what I can to get this program off the ground. I've just written a short plan. One goal is increase efficiency, consistency, and effectiveness in regard to AIS interdiction on all marinas around Utah Lake. That's my simple goal. I have several objectives to get there. I'll partway through those. This is one of my objectives, is to come to meetings like this and speak with you folks that have a genuine interest. And see what I can do. Yes, sir.
Have you ever witnessed a decon air, the way they pump the water through the motors and things like that?
It takes some training.
It takes a little know-how. I'd feel awful if someone burned up their own motor trying to push the water through it.
I was thinking about the safety of the people. I should have said the motors too.
Well,
right.
No,
right.
You're thinking right. People are more important than some stinking motor, but we've had, usually about once a year, we have some kind of minor damage out of the hundreds of boats we do. Keep in mind, as we get closer to this dredging, if we close like we're intending to close, we're closed even to decontaminations as well, unless we make other situations. So if we need to meet maybe with Ty, it might be worth our time, because I understand being such an urban-based park with our staffing, we offer an option that it's hard to find, so
Certainly.
we need to maybe have a discussion about that outside and see if we can help staff.
Thank you. Ty helped me get started on all this, and so.
Keep that back in your mind.
You're
that
absolutely
it's-
right. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that advice. So, I basically just wanted to let you know what I'm up to. Again,
How close are you guys to replacing canvas?
the paperwork's supposed to go out, I believe, next week.
So the idea is to maybe work our position into two positions where
No, it would
you only
be-
have one utility person and then the other person.
It would be one person who manages the region, but somebody that works for her can be directly signed, theoretically.
Right,
I
if
don't-
money goes.
That's what I would like to see. That's what would be appropriate, because the complexity of this lake is, there's nothing like it from any of the other projects I've worked.
Nowhere else in the state.
Yeah, so, but it's interesting how it's, the ownership and the leases, it's very complex. What I'm looking,
If you need help with introductions, I know all the rec, parks directors, I'm more than happy to organize something for you.
I just sent an email telling you I'm gonna be picking your brain like crazy, so, anyway,
Can I ask a question? What is it that's being brought from the other lake?
aquatic invasive species, quagga mussels.
Oh, okay.
They're devastating to the infrastructure. They'll change the ecology of the lake. The down users, I shouldn't say the end users, the pipes, water delivery systems, they will be clogged up, and it will cost the water users. They'll pick up the cost down the road of cleaning out pipes and equipment, irrigation. That's pretty extensive, to the tune of millions of dollars every year. We've been fighting this battle for 10 years. I've been involved with the program since 2006, just because I've been on the front lines in Cedar battling Lake Mead and then Lake Powell. So.
Right now, it's just Lake Powell in Utah that has known infestation, correct?
Correct. Deer Creek is suspected, but it's been suspected for 2 years.
It has one more season.
Yep. If we can maintain our negative results through December of this year, then it's off the list. I don't believe it is. How can you have it positive one day and after 2 years of extensive testing, have it negative? But I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on that, but we're hopeful.
Yeah, that will really help the workload when that gets off the list. Powell's bad enough, but
It's been a
Deer
nightmare.
Creek's just been a nightmare.
For the Forest State Parks folks.
Yeah. If it wasn't for our water level, it would have just been absolutely insane last year. The water level
I agree.
kind of helped one way.
Just so you know, I had a boat from Lake Mead show up right by my house in Cedar on the freeway. They broke down, couldn't figure out why their tires were popping. Well, they had 200 gallons of water in their boat, and they had mussels on it. They've been out of the water, but it had been open. All the water was accumulating from rain and stuff in Washington County. They've been out since, well, probably for 6 months, but they hadn't drained all their water. And guess where they were headed? So we took the boat for a month and cleaned it and decontaminated it and then let it dry. And so that's just one, and it had been like me for 42 years. That was what I was trying to get to. So.
Is there any support from legislature to support more positions for this, or?
We are the best funded organization in the country when it comes to, or at least in the West, when it comes to our invasive species work. Therefore, we have the best program. I went to a Western Regional panel meeting in Jackson a couple months ago, and all the Western folks were just jealous. We're the only agency that has a law enforcement component, which drives everybody crazy.
Wow.
And so,
yeah, it should.
Because you can have the problem and have the law, but if you don't have interested folks to help enforce the law, then you're just wasting time.
Exactly, yep.
And this is Bruce Johnson. He's our lieutenant for Division of Wildlife in Springville. He manages our law enforcement section for this region. I'm relying heavily on him to help, and Jason enforce rules out here too. So we're very lucky. The answer to your question is yes, and we're very lucky, and we don't dare ask more because they've been very generous.
Wasn't it recently that they actually have some dedicated funds off of boat registration to justify quagga, and that was approved last legislative
session?
So there is some actual dedicated funds to justify this, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because it ain't going anywhere. Now that Powell's had it, you're not gonna get rid of it.
And I'd say Powell's getting worse and worse, and it's just awful, so, yeah.
And some people say, why are you worried about it? You're gonna get it anyway. Well,
No, no,
maybe,
no, no,
maybe
no.
not, but for
Right.
every year we put it off, we're saving the taxpayers just literally millions of
betcha.
dollars
You betcha.
in work on that. We do have, the Fish and Wildlife Service gives us money, the BOR gives us money, there's a lot of local MDs, water user groups in different parts of the state that provide money for those specific areas, Forest Service, BLM, depending on with the water body around the
Well,
state, so there's a lot of different buckets of money that we're drawing from.
All right.
So, is this group, are you interested? Would you like updates? Would you kind of like the end of it down at the end of the summer, what I'm up to, what I found?
I think we would be interested in kind of an end of the season update on how many boats were interdicted and decontaminations, that kind of, just an overall picture for your more day-to-day operations. Jason, and, you know, he has the contacts for Linden and Saratoga and
Yes.
Lincoln Beach.
All right.
Yeah.
Is it only transferred by, you know, contamination on the boats, or like, can it go up the river from Powell up to into other reservoirs upstream? Or?
It will move, especially in slower water conditions, but it's moved in the Colorado River lower, the lower it's low moving Colorado River.
Hasn't gone upstream, but it's gone
Goes
downstream.
Correct. But that being said, Lake Powell has a river running down the middle of it, it's working its way up lake, but not necessarily in the main channel. It's throughout the lake now and it's growing. So, we're just doing our best, but
I've heard stories that Minnesota has successfully contained it. I don't know if that's true. I remember in some of the earlier trainings I went to, so there are examples that.
yeah, you can, well, the best way to contain it is close it to boating, but that's not an option. That would just devastate economies, you can't do that. But you can contain it in some of the smaller lakes in the northeast, they've actually removed it, the mussels with chemicals, but very small lakes where you can hit spotted areas, and places like this are probably just a little bit too dangerous. Anyway, thank you for your time, I have some business cards if you ever have any questions, but I thank you for letting me disrupt your meeting and crash your party.
Thank you for being here, Scott. We appreciate the update. Okay, item number 6, that's Eric talking about shoreline restoration work.
Yeah, so this year, just as a heads up, we put in our application through the Watershed Restoration Initiative to do phragmites and other invasive work at the mouth of Provo Bay. Last year, we did the bulk of the inside of that bay. This will finish it off by doing the flanks of the bay on the airport side, and then a little bit down by Sandy Beach. That'll be retreatment areas, so we assessed about 1,100 acres, and just under 500 acres of that will be retreated. We have a new section as well down at the south end of the lake in Goshen Bay that will be treated for the first time, 450 acres. We also, for the first time since I think we started the shoreline restoration work, there was a planting that was done right near the beginning, but because of changing water levels, it wasn't very successful. We've put in for, I think it's about 275 acres of seed that we will work with the Division of Wildlife and spread that in the location that was treated last year in Provo Bay, and then also up in Powell Slough along the shoreline of that, and also there was a section that burned in Powell Slough last fall that will be seeded as well. And so we're hopeful that that has a more positive reaction than the first time when we kind of gave up for a while. But the goal is to improve both of those areas and have them be better wetlands so that waterfowl can come back to those areas and be better access for our sportsmen.
What are you seeding with?
Division of Wildlife pulled together the seed mix. I don't recall what it was. Robbie Edgel is the one that is working on that, and he's the...
Is it like bulrushes though, or stuff like that, more emergence?
Yeah.
Okay.
The shoreline trail map, we talked about that earlier. This is to establish and help all of the communities surrounding the lake align their shoreline trail so that as we see gaps and so forth, we can get those filled. We're focusing on the Springville to Saratoga Springs portion for now, but we're identifying the entire trail delineation. We've met with all of the shoreline communities Their parks folks are giving us their updated trail data. Most of those have already done so, and so we have an online GIS map that's just in kind of its beta form right now, so that we're working through all of the submissions. Shortly, that'll be available for all of you, so you can take that back, and that'll be a great planning tool for communities wanting to finish up their shoreline trail.
You have a beta version on your website, or?
It's not on the website yet, I just have the link, and it's one that I signed into through online GIS, but that'll be converted into a public site here shortly, and then we'll put it on the website.
So, anybody who has an agenda, the second page that's been stapled back there is just a brief sheet of information. At the top is just a highlight of all the links that we have available online that can be resources for yourselves as well as your organizations and your communities. To our social media accounts, there's a link there for our newsletter sign up that we send out monthly. Our blog also has regular postings, just all on topics that are relevant to Utah Lake. Anywhere from some of these improvement projects to some private events that might run the lake, to anything that we can find that's going to grab that attention of the citizens that surround the lake. Also below it, you'll see just some statistics that we've seen some success on our social media. We've been working really hard on trying to connect better with the communities here and be able to show that positive side that Utah Lake has. Also in the communications plan, I have been meeting with representatives from all the cities that have shoreline on the lake, and I'll be continuing to do so throughout the rest of the month. These meetings are in an effort to try and stimulate more events and more programs at the lake while we're waiting for some of these projects to arrive upon completion. The meeting so far has gone well, and I will continue to have information available to anybody who's interested to the, like I said, programs or events that the cities run as well as private ones that we're made aware of.
One quick thing.
Yes.
If any of you are working on a project that you think might be of interest to the public, there's so much work happening down on the lake that oftentimes goes unnoticed because you guys are so busy doing the work that we don't get around to letting the public know about it. Send us a short paragraph or something like that on what project you're doing, and we would love to share that with the community to let people know all of the good things that are happening down there, so that all of those things help change perception and help get public involvement on what we're doing here. So,
My program included?
For sure.
Yeah, and I have business cards because I am new to the commission. I've only been here about 4 months, so I do have business cards for anybody who needs them, so that you have my contact information.
Is that all you have, Sam? Okay, the next item is myself talking about the Provo River Delta Restoration Project. The primary work that's proceeding on the Delta right now involves design work for many of the recreational features, some of the infrastructure that would be put into place when the Delta project moves forward. Probably the biggest update is we are currently in negotiations with 2 different landowners, and then just finished the appraisal process for 3 other landowners, and we'll be moving through negotiations with them here in the coming months. Nothing moves quickly when you talk about the federal government trying to acquire land, so it's definitely a long process and a lot of hoops that we have to go through. And so that will probably be the update for a few months. That's what we're doing. But that's where it stands. We're still, once all the land is acquired, we're still looking at a minimum of 2 to 3 year construction period. So, the project is still very much out there on the horizon. Not something that would be implemented anytime soon. Yeah.
So is that 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
5 is probably realistic. Yeah.
Just along with that, the grant that county and state parks put in for the trailhead, they've met. Have you heard that?
No, they met last Tuesday, I think was the day.
Yeah, they did it a little different this year.
They asked for contact information. If they had questions, they didn't call, so
Yep.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
So I talked to Ty the day before and tried to prime the pump the best I could, but we won't know for probably another couple months realistically.
Okay. So once that funding, what Jason's referring to is some enhancements of the trailhead out here at the bottom of the Provo River Parkway Trail. And the Mitigation Commission, as part of the Provo River Delta Project, would have some funding to contribute to that effort. And it involve a lot of partners, Provo City, Utah County, state parks, and hopefully that's the first thing that we're able to get done here. That would be something within next year to 2 years that we would like to have finished up, so. Okay. The next item is just kind of a general update. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share with the committee? Jason?
I forgot two things, and Utah Lake Commission involved. Your April field trips. I don't see how that's gonna happen. You guys might need to think of a second location. Maybe we can work through it, but I can't guarantee anything yet. I'm hoping to have a for sure answer, but maybe we can put you in the nature area, but we ought to talk.
You don't want a few kids riding bikes, but you'll be okay with it.
Bunch of kids wandering everywhere all over. It's fine. Put a little flag on them. And same with the Utah Lake Festival itself.
Those kids enjoy watching construction equipment.
The watching,
about the lake.
I enjoy watching it. It's the darting in and out of traffic that kids do anyway. And then again with the festival. If we're open on the weekends, sweet, we're good to go. But I won't have the official okay probably first.
We'll try to find a different location for the field trip.
Okay.
We might just use one of the other areas.
Okay.
The festival, let's figure out what's happening at the time. If
I'm hoping that they'll let us open on the
it's a
weekend.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's.
And it might be kind of a great time to bring 4,500 people or 4,000 people down here and say, look, this huge project's underway, it should be done by
I
August,
want
whatever,
to open on the
and then all of a
weekend.
sudden, boom, you could have a big splash once it's finished, so.
Yep. The goal is to be open Friday around 2 until Sunday night. That's my goal and that's what I'm pushing. Risk management's gonna have to weigh in a lot on this and I think I can sell everyone else on it, but I've gotta get risk management to sign off on it and same with the contractor, whoever's awarded the bid, if he or she are gonna be okay with us.
Why not move it to August 1st and celebrate the opening?
That would be the Utah Lake Commission.
That would be tough, that would be tough to plan though, because so far it's an undetermined end time.
Yeah, because the coffer dam can't come out before August 1st, so how long will that actually? Huh?
I thought it had to come out August 1st.
After, August 1st or after. So August 1st would be great.
And is there speaking of that project, is there a expedited bid process that you're planning to do that would allow a contractor to start by March 1st?
That is, everyone claims that it can be done, but it would be very tight. We're within 70 days of it, so that was my biggest concern. And DFCM, JUB, and our construction are like, they all say the exact, it'll be tight, but it can be done. I'll just have to stand back
They're
and
usually
believe it.
pessimists, so this is a good thing.
Yes, so they claim, so I'll believe it when I see it. I've seen several emails already, actually, there he is right now. So, there's Dan.
So are they putting specific no work days or we need to have the park open days into the contract? Because I know, you can do that with various contracts, so if you have those, are they doing that?
We want to award the bid, and we just want the project to be expedited as quickly as possible. We're not even sure if risk management would allow us to be open if we're under construction, even if it's not active construction, where it will be considered a construction zone. Would we have to fence off the marina so kids don't access there's a lot of unknowns. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to remain open.
So let's stay in touch, and when you know,
We will.
like, areas that will be closed, we can make a plan for the festival. And
Was concerned about your field trips and the festival.
We'll figure that out.
We will.
Okay. Any other updates from members of the committee? Okay. Thank you. Any comments from the public? Okay. Thank you. Well, we have another meeting coming up on February 19th at 9:30 a.m. That's planned to be held.
15th.
Or did I say 19th? Sorry. I think I said p.m. too. February 15th at 9:30 a.m. So we will plan to adjourn until that time. Thank you again for being here. How long have you been in Springfield?
Thank you.